good evening everyone, and welcome to tonight's version of the virtual porch. Well, we're glad you guys have stopped by and lean over the rail and just kind of catch up on how everybody's doing here with Utica Church of Christ. Hey, I begin with an apology. I'm sorry about Monday night's version. There was an upload issue with YouTube, which, unbeknownst to me, because we were in a meeting, I did not realize that it didn't link up, and I apologize for that. That's solely on me. But we're glad you're back tonight, and just a few things by way of update. I'm still not aware of anybody in our church family again that has contracted the disease, but we are certainly thankful to God and His graciousness in that, and the protection that He provides for us. I think that is just an absolute testimony to the prayer of our congregation, and just the way that we have held up all of our family members and everybody with our church in our prayers, and God has honored those and has protected us to this point, and we certainly give Him all the glory for that. We certainly don't want to let our guard down, and that includes our prayer guard, and we just want to continue to be lifting each other up in our prayers. We want to be praying for the elderly folks in our church family. I know we've got a few of our church family that are in nursing homes, and certainly want to remember them, that they'll be protected from this. Also, we also have a number of medical professionals, or those that work alongside of medical professionals, that we certainly want to continue to pray for their safety and protection as well. A lot of our essential workers, I know too, are out there on the front lines, and dealing with John Q. Public, and any exposure like that, obviously, just heightens that the potential of contracting the disease. So certainly want to keep everybody in our prayers. Just a couple of side notes, matters of prayer that with some of the individuals from our church family. Harold Kunkel had a fairly significant vascular surgery today, opening up his carotid arteries, and he also had some blockages in his heart. And so he was undergoing, and is currently, as we're recording this, undergoing a procedure, a heart procedure. So we want to keep Harold and Nancy Kunkel in our prayers, obviously. And Billy Gregg. Billy will be going in tomorrow. As you know, he had some colon surgery a while back, had an ileostomy, and now they're going to go in tomorrow and reverse that. So we want to certainly keep them, in our prayers moving forward. And so again, hey, as far as our worship goes, our elders will be meeting soon, along with some medical folks from their church family, begin formulating a strategy of how we can begin to, come back together and worship together physically. It'll be, again, we want to certainly be, mindful of the guidelines that our government has placed on mass gatherings. To date, they have not, they've still not relaxed those. As my understanding on what was said yesterday on the news is that the mass gathering ban is still in place. We're not allowed to gather more than 10 people at any one time. So we want to honor that, but we are beginning to formulate some strategies on how we can phase back into our worship gathering. But in the meantime, we will be gathering this coming Sunday morning, rain, snow, or shine. We'll be down at the high school, and we'll be doing a drive-in worship gathering. We'll likely be changing direction a little bit because it looks like we might be in for some rain. And so we're going to move the platform and everything up under the front porch of the high school gymnasium. So we may have a little directional change. But we certainly, just had such a wonderful gathering the last time we met up there. And so we'll be meeting there this coming Sunday. And of course, we'll also maintain our online worship gathering, which will take place at 10:30 as well. So again, just looking so forward to being with you on this coming weekend. Today, by way of program, of course, we obviously want to have some open chat time. But today, we do have a guest speaker with us, and it would be my lovely bride, Terry. So we'll go ahead and we'll turn it over to her.
Thanks to Doug for letting me do this. This is actually something that has been on my heart for a long time. It's a story that I was reading around Easter, and it has some reason it really reached out to me and touched my heart. And I've heard it, lots of times and taught on it lots of times. But maybe this year it was just particularly stood out to me. And I have a unique perspective because, I've been seriously ill in my lifetime. I know a lot of you have been seriously ill. We've talked about it in different circles, but so this is why this story really reaches out to me. And I also treat people who are seriously ill. Sometimes, if you don't know, I'm sure you know by now, but I am an ICU nurse. I have worked in ICU for a really long time, 30 years to be exact, all different kinds of ICUs. And I see a lot of suffering. And this is what this story is about, is suffering. And right now our country as a whole is suffering for different reasons, finances and illness. And this is truly what this story is about. And so this is found in Mark, the 5th chapter, and it is verse 21. So I'll just read it for you. When Jesus had again crossed over by boat to the other side of the lake, a large crowd gathered around him. And while he was by the lake, then one of the synagogue rulers named Jairus came there seeking Jesus. He fell at his feet and he pleaded earnestly with him, "My little daughter is dying. Please come, put your hands on her so she will be healed and live." So Jesus went with him. And during this time, a large crowd followed and pressed around him. And a woman was there who had been subject to bleeding for 12 years. She had suffered a great deal under the care of many doctors and had spent all she had, yet instead of getting better, she only grew worse. And she had heard about Jesus. So I think about this lady, because in the midst, Jesus is going somewhere else. He's already got a plan to go to Jairus' house because his daughter is sick. And then this woman comes, and this woman the story is centered around her. I don't like crowds. I don't like all the chaos. I'm not I don't like chaos. That's why I work night shift, because in the hospital it's very chaotic all the time. But at night, at least it's usually more organized chaos. But during this time, I think about what was happening. There's lots of people. Jesus just got off the boat, and all these people are coming to where he is because they've heard the stories. They know that he's healing people. They know, they've heard the rumors, and all these sick people are just coming to the town, and people just wanting to see him, and they're pressing in on him. It says they're pressing around him. And in the midst of all this chaos, this woman who has been sick for 12 years decides, I need to go because she's been sick. There's really only two reasons that this woman could have been sick or bleeding for 12 years. It's either a woman problem or a GI bleed. And I think about someone who has either one of those illnesses, because it's been perpetuated for 12 years. It said that she has spent all her money trying to find help, and she has suffered at the hands of the medical community, haven't been able to help her. But someone who has been losing blood for that long, even if it's cyclic, in some ways, they're very anemic. They are very tired. If you've ever had anemia, sometimes they're just weak. They're pale. They may be short of breath. They might have chest pain because they don't have enough oxygen to get to their blood, to pump through their heart. It's just a constant draining. And she has not just had a short time of this. She has had 12 years of this. It doesn't say anything about a family around to support her. If you know anything about biblical times back then, if you had any problem like this, you would be considered unclean. And so that would mean that you would have to be isolated from others. Certainly if it's a perpetual problem, which it says it's been going on for 12 years, she would have been isolated. Maybe at one point she had a husband. I don't know. But he's not allowed, a good, Jewish person is not allowed around her. And she's lonely, alone, desperate. Whatever money she was allotted for whatever reason, is almost gone. And she is totally destitute and desperate. And this is where she finds herself. In 1978, I was 15, and I had a ruptured appendix. They told me I had the flu. I went home, and my appendix ruptured, and I had 4 surgeries. I was in the hospital for 6 weeks. I lost 40 pounds. During that time, I lost any hope of ever having any kids, but we didn't know that too much later. I remember when I talked to my family about this, I remember they called and told my parents that I was not going to make it. My dad went out and bought my burial plot. And I remember my sister tells me she remembers that they were all called to the hospital, and she just remembers sitting in the hallway and rocking. She's my twin sister, and she could not picture me not being there. And things were desperate. And matter of fact, they wouldn't even let her come to the hospital much after that because they really weren't sure what was going to happen. I just remember, I don't remember much about it. I remember being so weak that I could not pick up my hand. And I would lay there and look around the room and see machines and things, but, people would come and go, but I didn't have the energy to talk to them. And it was weeks before I finally started getting better. And it wasn't really until a friend of mine came to see me. I had started getting a little bit better, and she says, "Can we please put your name on the prayer list?" And I was really shy. I was 15, and I didn't want everyone knowing that I was really sick. But I was desperate. I hadn't been able to keep food down at all for 4 weeks at that point, and I was sick of being sick. And so I said, yeah. And so they put my name on the prayer list, and it wasn't until after that that I started getting better. Now, it took me a long time to recover, and I still have some issues from that, but that was a desperate situation. For my family, my parents, it was very desperate. But Christ changed all that. And that is kind of what happens to this woman. Christ changes everything. So here she is. She's desperate, and she hears that Jesus is coming. She's seriously ill. She's isolated. She's down, she doesn't have any money. And she figures, Jesus is coming. She finally has a little bit of hope. The one that she heard about is coming, so she decides to go. Now, this is no easy feat for her because she's not feeling well. She's sick. She's not supposed to be there. She's supposed to be self-isolating, and but she's desperate. So we don't know where in this story, does she cover herself and go? Does she hide from the crowds and go? Or how does she get there that people don't know who she is? Because she's not supposed to be there. But anyway, she goes, and she just thinks to herself, she's just thinking, all I have to do is touch him. That's all I have to do. She has faith enough to know that the one she's been hearing about, all she has to do is touch him. She thinks, he's healing all these other people. Why not me? Why not me? And I can just picture this scene in this crowd of chaos, all these people around them, this busy street, and she touches his hem. Women don't do these things. For one, you don't touch men, especially back in Bible times. I hardly ever talk to them if not initiated in some way. But to actually physically touch someone, that is probably the biggest no-no. So I wonder what she was thinking at this time. But she sees him, and I personally think that she could not help it. I think there is something about his presence, there is something about him that she was just compelled. And the funny thing is, this is when the story gets really, really good. So let's picture this for a minute. I believe she's standing in this crowd. I believe there's all these people pressing in. I believe she reaches out and she touches his hem, and it's as if time stops. Time totally stops. Because if you have been sick for 12 minutes or 12 years and you feel the power of God go through you, that is going to be a forever changing moment. In one instant, 12 years fell away. All that suffering and all that desperation, and I mean, I can just see this. She probably touched his hem. She probably stood up, and she's probably standing there like this, just looking, because she knows that something has changed. Something is totally different about her, totally, because she is totally healed. And then out of all of this, while she's just standing there looking at herself, Jesus says, "Who touched me?" And I mean, she can't hide. She probably is just looking from ear to ear, smiling about what has happened. And he turns around and he says, "Who touched my clothes?" And the disciples are with him and says, "Sir, basically, there's all these people. How do you know who touched you? There's a big crowd of people." And he says, "Who touched me?" But Jesus kept looking around to see who had done it. And then the woman, knowing what happened to her, came and fell at his feet. And trembling with fear, she told him the whole truth. I think about the whole 12 years had to just come pouring out of her mouth about how she'd been alone, how she'd been desperate, how she'd been sick, how she'd gone to all these doctors, how it had cost her all her money, how she'd been alone, how she'd been afraid. I could just see it just rolling out of her mouth. She couldn't help herself. And here she is, just received this great power and this great healing. And I could just see her being excited and scared at the same time, and just pouring it out at Jesus' feet. Just laying it on the ground and saying, "Sir, here it is." And the first word he says to her, the first thing that comes out of his mouth, is he calls her daughter. He calls her daughter, an endearing term. 12 years of isolation, and the first word out of the master's face, the master's mouth, is daughter. What a privilege we have to be called sons and daughters of the King. I just think that is so awesome. And I just think about this story. He says, "Daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace and be freed from your suffering." In that moment, all those 12 years, all that desperation fell away. What kind of rejoicing that would have brought to her family, to her, to know that the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords, calls her daughter and embraces her in such a way. I've been working in the ICU at the hospital, and that's the hard part for me, is the isolation that they have. They're away from their families and they're scared. And I think about that. The other day, I was working on the COVID floor, and my patient got very ill very fast. Within 15 minutes that I was there, things went terribly wrong. But I had just got off the phone with her mother, and her mother had called her and wanted to talk to her. So I took the phone in and laid it by her, and she was on the breathing machine. And her mother told her how she was a great daughter and that she needed to fight that she needed to live and she needed to fight. And I got to talk to her mother, and we got to talking, and she said, I told her that I had gone and prayed with her, and she said, that's good, I'm glad you're taking care of her, and that we will pray as a family for her. And I said, that's good, because I think that's truly the only way that these people are going to make it, or that she's going to get better. And it wasn't long after that I had to make another phone call and tell her mother that things had gone terribly wrong. And I really, truly did not expect her to live. Her oxygen was really low. But her mother told me that she was marching around the house and she was claiming it for the Lord, that she was going to live and that she was going to make it through this. And I told her that's the best thing to do, and I will update her later. Things did get better, and I believe that Jesus did show up in that room. And by the morning, the patient woke up, which I never dreamed would happen. But she woke up. I saw her move. I walked in the room. She had her eyes open. She was looking at me. And I said, I'm so glad that you are awake. I said, your mom is praying for you. We are praying for you. And you are doing a good job. And to rest and to let everything work, now work, the medicine to work. And she totally understood me. And Jesus is meeting our needs in the midst of suffering. He's there to meet our needs. He's there to be with us. He is the answer to what ails all of us in every way, in every shape, whether it's a spiritual desperation, a money desperation, a sickness. Jesus is there, and he is on the scene, and nobody better to be with us than the one who calls us his family, the one who sees us as his sons and daughters. Thank you, and I hope you have a good evening, and I just thank you for letting me share this story with you.